Imagine stepping onto a packed train in Tokyo during rush hour. Every seat is taken. People are standing shoulder to shoulder. The carriage is quiet. Then, suddenly, a small child begins crying. At first, it is a whimper. Then the crying gets louder. The toddler is frustrated, overwhelmed, and clearly unhappy. You might expect the parent to immediately pull out a phone, offer a snack, threaten a consequence, or repeatedly whisper, "Stop crying." But instead, the mother stays beside her child. She remains calm. She doesn't pretend the child isn't there. She doesn't ignore the emotion. She simply gives the child a little space to experience the moment. And that tiny scene reveals something fascinating about Japanese approaches to raising children. The goal isn't simply to make a child obey. The deeper goal is to help a child gradually develop the ability to manage themselves. That difference is enormous. Because there is a big difference between a child who behaves because an adult is watching and a child who eventually learns how to behave when nobody is watching. And that leads to a question every parent eventually asks. How do you raise a child who can control their emotions, handle frustration, take responsibility, and make good choices without needing someone to constantly stand over them? The answer isn't one magical Japanese trick. And it certainly isn't that every Japanese child is perfectly calm or obedient. Japanese families are as diverse as families anywhere else. But there are several cultural ideas surrounding childhood that offer powerful lessons for parents everywhere. One of the most interesting is the Japanese concept of Shitsuke. Shitsuke is often translated as discipline, training, manners, or upbringing. But thinking of it simply as punishment misses the larger idea. The purpose is not merely to force a child to behave in the moment. It is to gradually teach habits, manners, consideration, and responsibility until those behaviors become part of everyday life. Think about the difference. Imagine your child throws a toy across the room. One response is, "Stop that. How many times do I have to tell you?" The child stops because the parent is angry. But another response asks a different question. What does my child need to learn here? Maybe they need to learn how to express frustration. Maybe they need to learn that anger is acceptable, but throwing things at people is not. Maybe they need words for what they are feeling. Maybe they need practice waiting. That changes the entire parenting conversation. Instead of seeing every difficult behavior as a personal attack, you begin seeing it as information. The behavior tells you that a skill is still developing. A young child doesn't automatically know how to regulate anger. They don't automatically know how to wait patiently. They don't automatically understand how their behavior affects everyone around them. Those abilities develop gradually through repetition, guidance, boundaries, and experience. So instead of asking, "How do I make my child stop?" try asking, "What is my child trying to learn?" That one question can completely change the way you respond. Now imagine another situation. Your child is struggling to put a puzzle together. They become frustrated. They throw one piece down. You can see exactly what is wrong. Your instinct is to reach over and fix it. But what happens if you pause? What happens if you give them a few moments to experiment? Maybe they try another piece. Maybe they rotate it. Maybe they ask for help. And eventually, they figure it out. That moment matters. Because the child didn't just complete a puzzle. They learned something much bigger. I can struggle with something and still keep going. This connects with another Japanese idea often described as Mimamoru. The word combines the idea of watching and protecting. It does not mean abandoning a child or refusing to help. It means knowing when your help is necessary and when your child needs the opportunity to try independently. That's a difficult balance. Parents naturally want to protect their children from frustration. When a child cries, we want the crying to stop. When a child struggles, we want to make the problem disappear. When a child fails, we want to rescue them from disappointment. And there is nothing wrong with wanting to help. But if adults solve every small problem before children get the opportunity to attempt it themselves, children may have fewer chances to discover their own abilities. Sometimes the most helpful thing a parent can do is stay nearby without immediately taking over. You can say, "I'm here. You can try. Take your time. If you need help, ask me." Notice what those words communicate. They don't say, "You're on your own." They say, "I trust you enough to try, and I'm close enough to help if you truly need me." That is a completely different message. It builds security and independence at the same time. And this brings us to another important part of Japanese family culture: emotional closeness. Japanese parenting is sometimes portrayed online as extremely strict because Japanese children may appear orderly and considerate in public. But discipline doesn't automatically mean emotional distance. In many Japanese families, young children experience a great deal of physical closeness and parental involvement. The Japanese concept of Amae is particularly interesting here. It describes a relationship in which a person feels safe enough to depend on another person's care and affection. For a young child, that sense of security can be incredibly important. A child who knows, "My parent is here for me," has a strong foundation from which to explore the world. Connection and independence are not opposites. In healthy development, they can support each other. Think about a child learning to ride a bicycle. At first, the parent holds the bike. Then the parent loosens their grip. Eventually, the parent lets go. The child moves forward alone. The parent didn't become less loving when they released the bicycle. They were expressing love in a different form. I believe you can do this. Parenting often works the same way. When children are very young, they need more support. As their abilities grow, parents can gradually transfer responsibility to them. Not all at once. Little by little. And that brings us to one of the most powerful lessons we can take from Japanese childhood routines. Responsibility is practiced. It's not simply demanded. In many Japanese schools, students participate in cleaning and maintaining their learning environment. The lesson isn't only about making a classroom look clean. It teaches something deeper. This place belongs to all of us, so I have a role in caring for it. That idea can begin at home. Instead of waiting until a child is older and suddenly announcing, "You're responsible now," parents can introduce tiny responsibilities much earlier. A young child might put toys away after playing. They might place their shoes in the same spot every day. They might carry their own small bag. They might help put napkins on the table. An older child might prepare part of their school things the night before. None of these tasks are impressive by themselves. That's exactly why they work. They are small enough to repeat. And repetition is powerful. One day of cleaning doesn't create responsibility. One day of saying thank you doesn't create gratitude. One day of helping doesn't create a strong sense of contribution. But thousands of tiny repetitions can shape a child's identity. Eventually, the child doesn't simply think, "Mom told me to clean." They begin to think, "I take care of my things." That is a completely different level of learning. Rules tell children what to do. Habits help children know what to do without being reminded. And identity can make those habits feel natural. This is why a simple family ritual can be more powerful than a long lecture. Imagine that every evening before dinner, your child has one job. They put the spoons on the table. That's it. No complicated reward chart. No huge speech. No constant negotiation. You simply make it part of the family's routine. At first, you remind them. Eventually, they remember. Then one day, they do it without being asked. That tiny moment is worth noticing. Because something has changed. The behavior is beginning to move from external instruction to internal habit. And that is one of the biggest goals of discipline. Not permanent supervision. Gradual self-management. But there is another important lesson here. Don't confuse calm parenting with passive parenting. A calm parent can still have strong boundaries. A child can be allowed to feel angry without being allowed to hit someone. A child can cry without getting everything they want. A child can be disappointed without the parent immediately removing the disappointment. Warmth doesn't require unlimited permissiveness. You can say, "I know you're upset. And I'm still not going to let you hit your brother." Both statements can be true. The emotion is accepted. The harmful behavior is limited. That combination teaches children something extremely important. All feelings are allowed, but not every action is. And that lesson takes repetition. A lot of repetition. Children don't learn emotional regulation because we explained it perfectly once. They learn through hundreds of ordinary moments. The spilled drink. The forgotten toy. The sibling argument. The supermarket disappointment. The bedtime protest. The failed homework assignment. Every difficult moment becomes an opportunity to practice a skill. And parents are practicing too. Because sometimes the hardest part isn't teaching the child to stay calm. It's staying calm ourselves. A child loses control. The adult becomes frustrated. The adult raises their voice. The child becomes even more overwhelmed. Then the situation gets bigger. But imagine if the adult pauses first. One breath. A lower voice. Fewer words. A clear boundary. Suddenly, the parent becomes part of the child's emotional regulation system instead of adding more intensity to the moment. Children learn from what we repeatedly demonstrate. If we want them to handle frustration calmly, they need to see adults handling frustration. If we want them to apologize, they need to hear adults apologize. If we want them to take responsibility, they need to see adults take responsibility. If we want them to speak respectfully, they need to experience respectful communication. Children are constantly watching. Not just listening. Watching. And that may be one of the most overlooked parenting tools of all. Your behavior becomes part of their environment. So if you're trying to introduce these ideas into your own home, don't attempt to transform everything overnight. Start ridiculously small. Choose one responsibility. One routine. One moment when you will pause instead of immediately solving the problem. For example, tonight, choose one simple task your child can own. Maybe they put their cup in the sink after dinner. Tomorrow, remind them. The next day, remind them again. Eventually, step back and see whether they remember. If they forget, don't turn it into a character judgment. Don't say, "You're so irresponsible." Simply remind them. What is your job after dinner? Then give them the chance to do it. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is repetition. Another powerful exercise is to change the questions you ask during difficult moments. Instead of, "Why are you acting like this?" Try, "What are you feeling?" Instead of, "Why can't you wait?" Try, "What could help you wait?" Instead of, "Do you want me to do it for you?" Try, "Do you want to try first, or would you like a little help?" Instead of, "Stop crying." Try, "I can see this is really hard for you." The words are different. But more importantly, the message is different. You're communicating. Your feelings make sense. You are still responsible for your actions. And I believe you can learn. That combination is powerful. And here's something else worth remembering. Don't romanticize another culture. Japanese families aren't perfect. Japanese children aren't automatically better behaved than children everywhere else. Different societies have different expectations, pressures, family structures, school systems, and social norms. There is no single Japanese parenting formula that guarantees a perfectly disciplined child. The real value is in examining the principles underneath the practices. Connection. Consistency. Gradual independence. Respect. responsibility, patience, modeling, and the willingness to let children experience manageable challenges instead of immediately removing every obstacle. These principles can exist in almost any family. You don't need to live in Tokyo. You don't need to copy Japanese culture. You simply need to decide what kind of person you want your child to become and then create small daily opportunities for them to practice becoming that person. Because character isn't usually built during one dramatic parenting conversation. It's built during ordinary Tuesday afternoons. It's built when a child puts away one toy. It's built when they wait their turn. It's built when they apologize. It's built when they try again after failing. It's built when they help someone without being asked. It's built when a parent stays calm during a tantrum. It's built when a child hears, "I know you're disappointed, but we can handle this." Again. And again. And again. Eventually, those moments become patterns. Patterns become habits. And habits can become part of identity. So the next time your child has a meltdown, don't immediately think, "How do I make this stop?" Take a breath. Ask yourself, what is my child learning right now? Maybe they are learning patience. Maybe they're learning how to tolerate disappointment. Maybe they're learning how to communicate anger. Maybe they're learning that boundaries remain firm even when emotions become intense. And maybe you're learning something too. That you don't have to control every moment to be a good parent. Sometimes you can simply stay close. Stay calm. Keep the boundary. And give your child a little room to grow. Tonight, choose one tiny responsibility. Tomorrow, repeat it. When your child struggles, pause before rescuing. When they become overwhelmed, connect before correcting. And when they succeed, let them experience the satisfaction of knowing, "I did that." Because the ultimate goal of parenting isn't to raise a child who behaves perfectly while you're standing beside them. It's to gradually raise a person who can make good choices when you're not there. A person who can manage difficult emotions. A person who can contribute to the people around them. A person who knows how to struggle without immediately giving up. A person who understands that freedom and responsibility belong together. And perhaps that's the most useful lesson we can take from these Japanese parenting ideas. Discipline doesn't have to begin with fear. It can begin with connection. Independence doesn't have to begin with distance. It can grow from security. Responsibility doesn't have to begin with punishment. It can begin with participation. And self-control doesn't appear overnight. It is built quietly, through hundreds of small moments that nobody else notices. So don't worry about becoming a perfect parent tomorrow. Choose one small thing. One habit. One responsibility. One moment of patience. Practice it consistently. Because sometimes the biggest changes in a child's character begin with something that looks almost too small to matter. A toy placed back on a shelf. A plate carried to the kitchen. A child taking one more breath before reacting. A parent choosing not to shout. A difficult moment that wasn't immediately rescued. Small moments. Repeated every day. And over time, those small moments can become the kind of person your child is becoming. Not because you forced them to become that person. But because you gave them the opportunity to practice it. And that's where real self-discipline begins.